Good guys, I got another book review for you. This one is No More Mr. Nice Guy. I read this book a couple of years ago, and I didn't really like. Whatever I saw it, I bought it, and then sort of resonated with me a little bit, but it didn't really hit. And then I recently read this again. John Sonmez recommended this to me. Shout out, John. Thanks for all the great recommendations. Um, and it hit me in a way that I hadn't really anticipated it to hit me. I even bought the audiobook and I'm listening to it in the gym at the same time. This one's intense because this nice guy syndrome thing is really an epidemic. Um, and his main argument in the book is, and I agree with this, is in men's formative years, we're basically surrounded by women. All of our authority figures are women. Prior to urbanized society, we lived in an agrarian society, so we were farmers and we lived out in the country. We were more rural, just in general, just the whole world was. There's still parts of it, but I'm talking about the developing world, the Western world. And as industrialization moved in, fathers left the home. They weren't on the farm anymore. They weren't on the homestead. Um, they were at the factory. They were in the office. And so sons basically never saw their father do work like that, right? They would come home, but they were away from their fathers for extended periods of time. And then as our education system really, it's not really an education system, it's an indoctrination system, really, is what it is. As the education system as young boys and young girls were put in the education system, it was very much treated like an assembly line. Right? It was based off the Prussian model, and the Prussians were good at two things: building things and engineering things, and making soldiers. And so, you get this sort of like one size fits all education that we have in America. I don't really know what it's like in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, or the Western world anyway. But in America, for sure, it's a garbage education system. I worked in education, and it's an embarrassment, and it creates very stupid people who don't actually think for themselves. Anyway, the young boys, when they're in school, basically, their authority figures are mom when they're little. Then when they get to elementary school, mom. Middle school, mom. High school, primarily it's mom. So basically, all of their authority figures are women. They don't actually know, and their fathers are off at work. Now, obviously, you got two-parent households. Both of the parents work now. This has been like this for at least the last 3 generations, maybe longer. The young men don't actually learn how to be men from older men. Because it used to be, you were surrounded by your grandfather, your father, your uncles, da da da. Everybody lived in a general vicinity, but in the last 60 to 80 years, that hasn't been the case. And so there's this thing where men are sort of like feminized. They're afraid of their masculinity. They're afraid of their virility. They're afraid of their sexuality. They're afraid of really just being men, just going out into the world and piercing nature, really, killing it. And I count myself in that regard. I definitely was raised, middle class, coddled. Although I did have a father in the home, although thank God I come from a culture, I'm Dominican, the men tend to be a little bit more, machista, or machismo. There's more machismo, which I don't think it's not a bad thing at all. It's what men are. It's, you're chasing skirts, you're fucking playing dominoes, you're talking loud, you're talking shit, you're making things happen. You go out, you work, you hustle, whatever. I actually thought it was a great thing. But in my environment, being, raised where I was, definitely the men are not really the manliest men around. And it's actually been discouraged. And he talks about like men rediscovering that in themselves. That's another reason too why I started this YouTube channel, because it was just in every aspect of my life. There are very few men, and I think the masculine space shares this too. It's like there's so few models of masculinity, and it's almost like collectively we're all trying to reclaim it at the same time, and trying to figure out, we're all like sharing notes, and now it's coming out into the open, and so. Many of the models of masculinity have been lost. But he talks about it in this. And the nice guy syndrome, basically, he says that a nice guy looks nice on the surface, but actually isn't nice because he's a coward and he's a liar. Because he pretends he doesn't have the needs he has, and sort of pretends he doesn't need anybody's help, and is always there to help out somebody else. Always there to fully satisfy his girlfriend. Always there to like be the best son and all this other stuff. But he doesn't actually get his own needs met. So what happens is he represses, and then it blows up. Or he's passive aggressive. And I noticed that tons of guys are like that. Like, they don't come out and just say what's going on. That they have to like skirt around the issue. I do corporate training, and I notice that even with the guys at the corporate training, and I have to train them, like, just say what the problem is. Just say what it is. And they have so much anxiety over it. And these are grown men. These are men older than me. And they just won't speak forthrightly. And so that's one of the tenets in it. And then he talks about the making of the nice guy, which is the coddling, especially from the mother. There's a thing in this book where he talks about monogamy with the mother. And for all of you Freud fans, I think Jung touched on this as well. The notion of the Oedipal son. Full disclosure, I was an Oedipal son. Definitely was not a healthy relationship with my mother. I don't think I'm the only one in that regard. And so there's a weird dynamic that happens when parents try to fill their emotional needs with their children. It fucks them up. Like it really does. It's tough. And it takes a long time, I think, for the children to sort of get over that, if they ever do. It's just in a natural order. If you ever know anything about the story of Oedipus, there's a part where Oedipus keeps asking questions because he's starting to figure out. In the story, if you guys don't know with Oedipus, basically, Oedipus, Oedipus is the son of a king, and the king goes to the oracle, and the oracle tells him that you're going to be killed by your son. Basically, is what he says. And so, in order for the son, the father, the king, not to be killed by the son, he goes and he puts him out into I think a heath or something, or a pasture, a hill, to be killed by the elements. But he's exposed to the elements, and he thinks he's going to die. What ends up happening is like a sheep herder or something finds him, brings him back, and takes him to another kingdom, and then that king raises him as his son. And then Oedipus goes to the oracle where he's at, and he's like, "You're going to kill your father." And so he doesn't want to kill his father, so he leaves. What ends up happening, he's on a road. He meets a guy with a caravan, right? A retinue, it's called. A retinue is like a fancy word for a posse. And he meets him on like this fork in the road. And they get into an altercation, and Oedipus strikes him down, and he strikes down all the men with him. Then he goes into, I think it's Thebes. And there's an oracle that says, "Oh, if our king is gone. If you can solve the riddle, you marry the queen, and you become king." He solves the riddle, marries the queen. One thing leads to another. Then he starts to ask like all these questions because like this blind man shows up, and he starts asking questions. And Jocasta, who is the queen, is like, "Oh no, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Da 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 da. Like, don't worry about it." Like, he keeps asking all these questions, and then he starts getting really suspicious. And one thing leads to another, and he finds out that the guy he killed on the road was his father. When he finds this out, he takes pins from Jocasta, his mother, and he blinds himself. And I think she commits suicide in the story or something to that effect. But basically the story is like, from what I took from it was, in the Oedipal son is sort of the mother, it's called emotional incest, where the mother basically treats the son like a son husband. Like, that's the whole monogamy to the mother thing. You see this a lot actually in the NBA. A lot of those guys, like, they're son husbands. I mean, they don't even realize it. But like, when a young boy has that sort of pressure on him to be the man of the house without a man in the house, like, he's supposed to be a boy and growing into a man, and somebody's supposed to take him through that process. But if all of this pressure is placed on him before he's actually mature enough to handle this sort of pressure, even if he does handle the pressure, I think that there's a part of him that still is incomplete. Because young men need other men to show them the path. Like, they need other men to lead them, take them away from the mother, rip them away from the mother, and show them what manhood is. Like, you can't just like become a man by accident. Like, other men have to show you. They have to teach you what these things are. You have to be developed into it. And I think that that's something that's definitely missing. I think it's missing in our society. And what a lot of men are now trying to do, is to piece together all these ancient rites and pay it forward. And in this book, in No One Mr. Nice Guy, he definitely touches on that, about the sensitive male. But he also touches on the fact that that's unbelievably unattractive to women. It's not attractive. It's not attractive to anybody. It's these guys that get along better with women than they do with men. That's unnatural. Men should be able to get along with other men. You should not be able to get along with women better than you do with other men. It's the same thing in the inverse with a woman. A woman who can't get along with other women, that's suspect. Like, why does your own gender not mess with you? Anyway. But in it, he's talking about make your needs a priority, reclaim your personal power, reclaim your masculinity, and enlighten self-interest in terms of make your own needs a priority. That's huge. I'm of the philosophy that every man is the head of his house, and every man is a king, right? Whether he's a shadow king, whether he's a bad king or a good one or whatever, it's irrelevant. Like, every man has the capacity for it. That's one of the 4 archetypes of manhood. Is every man is a king, and the king is the one that determines how the kingdom is going to be run. And so his needs are paramount, because if he's not healthy, the kingdom doesn't have a head. And I didn't understand this because I was sort of recovering from this. I'm like, oh, I gotta always tend to everybody else. I gotta always make sure that I don't hurt everybody's feelings or whatever else. But I didn't realize, like, I was resentful, super resentful at all the other people around me because my needs weren't being met. I wasn't telling people what I needed. I wasn't telling people what was and wasn't okay. I was just like pretending shit didn't bother me when it actually really pissed me off. If there was a girl I was into that I wanted to hook up with, whatever. Like, I was sort of like, oh no, I just like, I'm just your friend and and it was bullshit because none of it was true. And then even if she was into me, I had this sort of persona that nice guys don't like have sex with women. Like, it was so stupid. But it was just poor. It was just garbage conditioning. And this happens, I think, from, I don't think it's necessarily women's fault, but I think it's the lack of masculine energy in a female environment. I don't think that it's not negative that you have feminine influence, but you have to have the masculine influence to balance it. Otherwise, it's just a mess. Like, it just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't fucking work at all. And this is what he's talking about in this book. One of the last, in chapter 9, is get the life you want, discover your passion and potential in life, work, and career. Yeah, one of the main points he brings up in the book is nice guys never realize their potential. Because in order for a man to realize his potential, like, potential in the world is also sexual potential. And this they touched on this in Think and Grow Rich. I think sexual transmutation, where he says is like a man's virility, his sexual appetite is tied into his success in his work, right? It's like that need to conquer things, right? When you go out into the world and you conquer it, you go out and you kill a wild animal, you bring it back to the house, right? You go out and you fight a battle and you bring it back, you slay the dragon, you come and bring it, and you claim the princess and all that. So, and these are themes that are all over mythology. And I'm going to get into Joseph Campbell because I'm going to read Hero with a Thousand Faces. I'll do a book review on that. But this is a common thread. This is a common thread in manhood, is the guy has to go out and face the monster. Really, the monster's here, and it's in here. He has to go out and slay the monster, and then he comes back and he gets the divine feminine. And it's usually represented in the virgin, but it's not really the girl necessarily, but it's the femininity within the girl, if that makes sense. And so, basically in the book, that's what he touches on. And I would ask any guy to pick this up if you've been struggling with that. He has exercises in the book, and he walks you through how to undo all of this damage. It is damage. It's not good. You being hypersensitive and crying about everything is bad. You should be more in control of your emotions. You should be far more in control of you should be crying all the time. Like, this is not appropriate at all. He goes into that, man. He goes into just being straightforward. You don't have to be treat people like garbage, but you got to be forthright. You got to tell people where your boundaries are, what's okay to cross and what's not okay to cross, what you're cool with, what you're not cool with. I couldn't even encapsulate it in everything because the book is so profound. Because he really just nails the head. He really nails it. And this is an epidemic in our society. So many men are suffering from this nice guy syndrome thing, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Like, you gotta have an edge to you. You gotta be a son of a bitch sometimes. You just have to. You don't have to go out and hurt people. You don't go out to be abused people, but you gotta let them know like what's okay and what isn't okay, and be able to fight for your space in the world. Like when I reviewed Winning, like I said it, T.S. Grover made it okay for me to win and to beat other people, and like got me back in touch with the fact that it's great, it's good when you go and you conquer another foe. Like it's amazing because especially if you worked your ass off for it and then you go beat a guy and then you're better than him, you get a gold, you get a gold medal or you get number one or whatever it is. Like that's amazing and it's necessary because when you beat him, then he wants to work harder to beat you. And there's nothing nice about that. There's nothing nice about domination. There's nothing nice about winning. There's nothing nice about being relentless. There's nothing nice about it, and it's good. And it's necessary because it's what kept our ancestors safe. It's what keeps your family safe. It's what keeps you safe. Developing that aggression and that obstinance and that strength of character, and just getting rid of that nice guy stuff, man. It's horse shit. It's garbage. Like it's a poison, and it's a mind virus that is destroying our society. It's destroying our society. There is no other way around it. This is what it is. And I'm glad that this space exists. That there are other men coming out and not only speaking out, but like they're really trying to help one another out. Whether it's me or another content creator, whatever it is, man. Like keep working, keep grinding. Read these books, employ these exercises, keep working on yourself, man, because it gets better, man. So No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert A. Glover. He's also got a website. I think it's nomoremrniceguy.com. He's got exercises and groups. There are No More Mr. Nice Guy meetups. You could look up on like meetup.com, but it's probably got it on the website. It's got a thing. And I've been to a couple of the groups, and it's intense, man. These guys really push you to be a better version of yourself. So check out the book. Look out for more of these reviews that I'm doing. And where's the camera? There it is. And yeah, man. Catch you next time. Of Heroes and Men. Peace.